What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hoops and Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Isaac, and today we're going to be predicting every NFL award. I'll tell you who my top three favorites to win the award are and who the person I think is going to win it will be. To start off at MVP, I have Josh Allen at number 3. Josh Allen is a great quarterback, and he's been pretty good for the last couple of years for the Bills to go along with their elite receiver with Stephon Diggs. But I just don't think that he's going to be able to get it done. I think that there are a couple better QBs than Josh Allen, and I'd say it was pretty close between the two, but Joe Burrow and Josh Allen were who I was deciding between for number 3. And with Joe Burrow already being injured, he got injured in the preseason, but with that injury, that just worries me that he could possibly end up getting more injuries. So that is why I went with Josh Allen over Joe Burrow. At number 2, I put Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes was the choice last year for MVP, which is a big reason why I ended up putting him at number 2. I would have liked to put him at number 1, but I think that just because he won it last year, and the person who I put at number 1, I feel like is another great player that can match Patrick Mahomes' skill level. So, I mean, just with the fact that Pat won it last year, I feel like they're going to end up picking somebody new this year just because I feel like the person who I think they're going to pick will be the same skill level as Patrick Mahomes this year. And the person I picked at number 1 is Jalen Hurts. He's an elite QB. He's been in the league for a few years, and I mean, last year he was a runner-up for MVP. I'm pretty sure he was second behind Patrick Mahomes. But I mean, Jalen Hurts was a great player last year. The Eagles have a solid defense, and they have pretty good receiving core. I mean, they've got AJ Brown, and they have Devontae Smith, and I mean they have Dallas Goedert at tight end. So I mean they have decent receivers, and I mean I think that Jalen Hurts is just going to be able to get it done for this Eagles team, and I think that they will have a phenomenal season. Next up, we have Offensive Player of the Year, and my number 3 pick for Offensive Player of the Year is Justin Fields. And I feel like Justin Fields is a very underrated pick, and he's a very underrated QB even for the Bears. And I mean, he can just scramble. So I mean, like, he's going to be getting he's going to be running for a lot of touchdowns, I feel like. And I mean, he does have a pretty elite receiver with DJ Moore. So I mean, I think that Justin Fields is going to have a phenomenal season. I don't think that the Bears are going to be great, but I think they'll be solid. And I think that they're going to be better than people expect them to be. But, I mean, I just feel like Justin Fields will be definitely a contender, but won't win it this year. But, like I said, he's a phenomenal scrambler. And, I mean, I feel like he's comparable to, like, somebody like Lamar Jackson. The number 2 pick that I have to win it is Justin Jefferson. He is number 2 just because, I mean, he is really good, but I feel like as Kirk Cousins starts to get older, I feel like that's going to bring down the production levels of Justin Jefferson, and they picked up Jordan Addison in the draft, so he's going to have another target that he has to compete with. So I feel like it's going to be a little harder for Justin Jefferson this year. And I mean, he won it last year, but he had a really good year last year. And they also didn't have Jordan Addison, and Kirk Cousins was younger than he is this year, obviously. So that's the main reason why Justin Jefferson probably won't win. The 2 main reasons is just because Kirk Cousins is starting to get older, and because of Jordan Addison. I do really like Jordan Addison. And my pick for Offensive Player of the Year to win it all is Christian McCaffrey. I really like Christian McCaffrey, and with not knowing how good of a QB Trey Lance or Brock Purdy will be, depending on who they start, I feel like they're going to probably be handing off the ball quite a bit. And Christian McCaffrey is an elite running back. I mean, obviously the 49ers have solid receivers, but I feel like Christian McCaffrey is going to produce this year. I mean, with him staying healthy last year, I think that he's just going to be a phenomenal running back for this 49ers team. And I feel like he's going to be able to carry this team on their back. And I feel like they'll be able to make it to the playoffs. I mean, they lost Jimmy G, but I mean, I feel like he's more of a backup QB anyway. I feel like I feel like Brock Purdy is better than Jimmy G. I just really like Brock Purdy, but I mean, Christian McCaffrey can also catch the ball a little bit. He's a really fast running back. He's really athletic. So I feel like he will be able to get it done for this 49ers team. Next up, we have Defensive Player of the Year. And my number 3 pick is TJ Watt. He's an absolute beast. And I just feel like he's going to break through these offensive lines and just get to the QB. I feel like he's going to be phenomenal this year, but just not as good as he has been in the past or maybe will be in the future. But I feel like there is just better picks that could be Defensive Player of the Year this year. Next up, we have a younger player who was just drafted. We have Aiden Hutchinson. I do really like Aiden Hutchinson for the Detroit Lions. I think that he will be able to do solid this year. I don't know if he will do great, but I feel like he'll do pretty decent. And, I mean, there's not much to say about Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, he's a beast. He's a really big guy and very powerful. And the number 1 pick, I mean, I feel like it's pretty obvious for who's going to win Defensive Player of the Year this year. It's going to be Micah Parsons. As long as Micah Parsons stays healthy, I feel like there's a 99% chance that he wins Defensive Player of the Year this year. He is just insane. He is one of the greatest defensive players in the league, probably that we've seen in a while. I mean, he's just, I really do like Micah Parsons, even though I do dislike the Cowboys. Micah Parsons is a beast. And, I mean, he won Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he has a pretty big, he's making a pretty big check with the Dallas Cowboys. So I think that he will perform for that Cowboys team. For Coach of the Year, at the number 3 spot, I have Mike Tomlin. I feel like a lot of people don't see the Pittsburgh Steelers making it very far, but Kenny Pickett is going to be improving. He's just going to get better, and I feel like George Pickens will probably have a pretty good season to go along with Deontay Johnson. So they have 2 solid receivers to go with Kenny Pickett, and they also have Najee Harris, who is another young player that they have on their team at running back. And I mean, they have George Pickens, who's young. They have Kenny Pickett, who's young. They have Najee Harris, that's young. So they have many young pieces. But I mean, I just don't think that they'll be able to get this done with the Coach of the Year aspect. At number 2, I have Matt Eberflus, the coach for the Bears. I do really like the Bears this season, and I think that they are a very overlooked team. And with Justin Fields and the new pickup of DJ Moore, I feel like they'll do phenomenal. I do really like DJ Moore. I just feel like he never really had a solid QB besides maybe besides Cam Newton. I'm not sure about that one, but Cam Newton, I feel like was more of a rushing quarterback. He could throw a little bit too, but I feel like he's never really had a good quarterback that's been thrown to him, or at least not in a while. And I feel like Justin Fields is also comparable to maybe Cam Newton, but I mean, because he does run quite a bit. He can run the ball, but I feel like he can also throw the ball quite a bit. So I feel like DJ Moore and Justin Fields are going to make this Bears team better than everybody thinks they're going to be. My pick to win Coach of the Year is Dan Campbell. I do really like the Lions this year. I think they'll be good. They have Jahmyr Gibbs at running back, who's very young. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's young. I mean, they have a pretty good they have a pretty good chance. I mean, they have young defensive players, so they have a pretty good chance. I mean, like I said, Aiden Hutchinson. So they have a really solid chance at being good this year. And I mean, we haven't seen the Lions be solid in quite a bit. So I mean, these last couple of years have been a little rough, but I feel like Amon-Ra St. Brown had a phenomenal year last year, and Jahmyr Gibbs is supposed to be pretty solid. And they also have David Montgomery, who's not bad. So I do really like the Lions this year. Comeback player of the year at the number 3 spot, I have Tua Tagovailoa. He was out for a pretty big chunk of the season last year, and I feel like he could produce with the Dolphins if he stays healthy this year. And with him having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as his receivers, he has a phenomenal core. And I mean, Tyreek Hill's speed is just unmatchable. And I feel like he's just going to be able to produce through these passes from Tua. And I think that Tua does have a chance to be in the runnings if he can stay healthy. But I'm not 100% positive that he will be able to win this award. At the number 2 spot, I have Calvin Ridley, who was suspended last year. And with him going to the Jags, he has Trevor Lawrence, and I feel like Trevor Lawrence is going to have a breakout year this year. We have seen Trevor Lawrence do okay these last couple of seasons that he's been in the league, but we haven't seen him do great, and I feel like this is the year where we're going to see Trevor Lawrence have a really solid year, and I feel like he is just going to be able to get this done for the Jaguars. And Calvin Ridley, before he was suspended, was an elite level receiver, so I would like to see him come back at that same level and produce like he was when he was with the Falcons. And my number 1 pick to win Comeback Player of the Year is Breece Hall. Breece Hall is he was doing pretty solid before he had his injury last year in his rookie year. So I do really like Breece Hall this year. And I feel like the only thing that could stop him is the pickup of Dalvin Cook to the Jets. Because if Dalvin Cook ends up doing a lot better than Breece Hall, then obviously they're going to use Dalvin Cook more. But Dalvin Cook is also getting older, so there is a good chance that Breece Hall is going to have more opportunities. And I feel like Breece Hall is just a beast. I feel like he's going to have a great season if he can stay healthy and if he is picked over Dalvin Cook. For Offensive Rookie of the Year, my number 3 pick is Anthony Richardson. And to be honest, it was between Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud. But with watching C.J. Stroud in the preseason, I just feel like he wasn't good enough to compete with Anthony Richardson. I do really like Anthony Richardson, and he has Michael Pittman at the receiving spot, who is pretty solid. So I do really like his odds at being in the runnings, but I don't like the odds of him winning the award. At number 2, I put Bryce Young. A lot of people like Bryce Young, but I think that he's going to fall just short of winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was a phenomenal player in college, but I mean, the Panthers don't really have any great receivers. I mean, they have Adam Thielen, but they don't have any great receivers, and I feel like for Bryce Young to perform, he's going to need those receivers to try to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he just doesn't have that. So I feel like that's the major problem with Bryce Young on this Panthers team. My number 1 pick to win Offensive Rookie of the Year is Bijan Robinson, and with him being on the Falcons, there is a big chance that they're going to use him a lot more than throwing the ball, just because, I mean, they have Desmond Ridder as their QB1, and I mean, he was pretty solid in college, but he just hasn't really had the chance to start in the NFL just because Marcus Mariota was their starting QB last year. So he hasn't really had the chance to adjust to the NFL and starting. So I feel like it's going to be a rough year with passing for this Falcons team. So that's why I feel like they're going to rely more on their running, and Bijan Robinson is going to be their running back 1. and I feel like he's a really great player. For Defensive Player of the Year, at the number 3 spot, I have cornerback Christian Gonzalez for the Patriots. I do really like Christian, and I actually had the chance to watch him in the Patriots open practice. And I mean, he's a really great guy, and it might be a little biased just because I do really like the I guess you could say, like, the attitude that he brings to the game. He isn't I've seen players at the practice who like just ignored the fans, but he was willing to like even give a wave at the fans, which is really nice. And I mean, in college he was pretty solid for the Oregon Ducks, I believe. And I mean, in practice he looked like he was doing pretty solid. So I do really like his odds at being a runner-up for Defensive Rookie of the Year. At number 2, we have Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter was an absolute beast for the Georgia Bulldogs. And then he was drafted to the Eagles, who have one of the best defenses in the league. So, I mean, the only reason he fell so far in the draft was because of the fact that he had some issues off the field that were pretty major. So I do really like Jalen Carter, but I don't know if he is going to be able to win Rookie of the Year just because, I mean, he does have so many other defensive players on the Eagles that are going to also be doing great. So it's going to be really hard for him to earn his spot as Defensive Rookie of the Year. He has to really be the best defensive player that they have on that Eagles team, which is going to be really hard to do because they have so much talent. And finally, for my player to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, I have Will Anderson. Will Anderson is a very powerful player, and I feel like he's very underestimated because I feel like a lot of people are going to have Jalen Carter winning this just because I do really like Jalen Carter, but I feel like everybody doesn't think about the fact that there's so many good defensive players on that Eagles team, and Will Anderson is one of, if not, he's going to be one of the best defensive players on that Texans team just because they don't have as much talent as the Eagles. So for Will Anderson to win this, I don't doubt him because he is just like such an underdog and I feel like the power that he has is very overlooked. That's going to be it for today's episode. If you guys enjoyed, hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next Sunday here on the Hoops and Stuff podcast.